everyone, this is our informational video about muscular dystrophy, obesity, and Down syndrome. I'm Kelly.
I'm Matt.
I'm Leah.
I'm Maddie.
I'm Sean.
And I'm Julia. And I'm Jessica. Hi, my name is Kelly. I'm a high school teacher. I have a student in my class with muscular dystrophy, and I'd love to learn more. I hear you're a professional.
For sure, yeah, I can answer any questions you may have.
Okay. What is muscular dystrophy?
Well, for starters, muscular dystrophy is an inheritable recessive genetic disorder that causes a mutation on one of our sex chromosomes that codes for the formation of the protein dystrophin. Now, what this protein does is it helps form the structure of our muscles. So if you lack this protein, your muscles are going to begin to degenerate over time.
Okay, what are some symptoms I can see in my student?
Well, there are many symptoms that you may see, but some of them may include falling, running very slowly. They may have trouble navigating stairs or hills, that kind of thing. You also might see that they stand on their toes a lot, they may lean backwards, they also might have enlarged calves. Many who have this disorder often will use a wheelchair by age 12, but the symptoms I mentioned earlier, you might even see as early as 5. Other forms though of muscular dystrophy are less severe, so you might not actually have that many problems with your students until they reach into teenagehood. But yeah, so that's that.
Are there any safety or medical concerns that I should be aware of for my student with muscular dystrophy?
Yeah, basically any safety or medical concerns, the main one would be over-exercising or overworking your students. Because some of them, the dystrophy may be so far on that it starts affecting the function of their heart. So if you overwork them, there is a chance of heart attacks or heart failure and that kind of thing. So you just want to make sure that you encourage activity, but you don't push them beyond their comfort zone. Besides that, there are other things like falling out of a wheelchair, not being able to get back into it, joint impacts, because they don't have muscles to absorb a lot of the impacts that you might have, so there's a little bit more pressure put on their joints. Other than that, just general falls and balance issues.
Okay. Any general recommendations for me as a PE teacher?
Yeah, there are lots of recommendations I actually have. One of the big ones is the one that I mentioned before, not pushing your students past that comfort level, but other ones would be using lightweight equipment so you're not putting unnecessary taxation on their arms, allowing adequate time for them to complete tasks that you ask them to do, allow for a lot of bathroom breaks, time for them to use medications. Use of a buddy system often works really well if you pair them up with a more mature student in your class and kind of help them through your session. Make sure you're always talking to your students at eye level. So if they're in a wheelchair, you squat down so you're looking eye to eye. Pretty much anything else would you do with a normal student, making sure that you facilitate their learning through how they learn, whether that be through kinesthetic, visual, that kind of means. Biggest tip that I would give is consult a physiotherapist.
Okay.
So if you find a local physio or one that's connected through your school, I would recommend calling them up.
Okay, thank you. Are there any successful athletes with muscular dystrophy that I can tell my students about?
Yeah, there are actually 2. Danielle Piers, she has limb-girdle muscular dystrophy, and she used to play for the Canadian Paralympic wheelchair basketball team. And I believe she won bronze at one of the summer games back in the early 2000s. But currently she is a kinesiology professor at the University of Alberta. And then there is Mike Hoffman. He is a golfer on the PGA Tour, currently ranked 189th in the world. He does a lot of active fundraisers through charity golf tournaments.
Okay, where could I go as an educator to find more information?
2 great sites, Muscular Dystrophy Canada and the US National Library of Medicine.
Okay, thank you so much. I think I know a lot more than I did before.
You're welcome.
Hello, welcome to our YouTube channel. If you don't already know, my name is Mandy.
I'm Leah.
I'm Sean.
Today we're going to be answering some Q&A.
All right, so let's see what our first question is. From Physical Educator 604. They want to know, how do you motivate a child with obesity to participate? Okay, well, since a child who is obese usually has a BMI over 30, and they often have low self-esteem and they feel shy and embarrassed to participate. Therefore, we want to set goals that are attainable and individualized so they are optimally challenged, but we're not setting them up for failure. If they can achieve their own personal goals, they will in turn feel a sense of accomplishment and want to continue in the physical activity. We want to give lots of positive verbal feedback and make it fun.
Okay, so our next question from Fitness Expert 1995 is, as a coach or teacher, how do you avoid coming in with negative assumptions of a student's work ethic or athletic ability?
So it's important to me to never come in with a preconceived bias towards my students. As a teacher, I want to allow the opportunity to express their interests and learning styles. This will allow me to have a greater understanding of each individual's drives and what helps them participate in physical activity. Every child has their own unique qualities, and it's important for them to come up with activities that are meaningful to them. So that relates back to creating goals that are individualized, so they're able to find a sense of accomplishment for each activity.
Awesome. Okay, let's see what our next question is. When working with children with obesity, what safety concerns should we be aware of?
Some children with obesity may deal with asthma, may have diabetes, stress on joints from carrying excess weight, heat exhaustion, and dehydration.
And it's also important that we want to allow children that need medication, like puffers, or if they have to take insulin, to give them the time and space for them to do that, and also provide any help that they may need if they are a younger child.
Yeah, and that kind of feeds into our next question. So what are some strategies you use to make sure we don't trigger these safety conditions?
Well, I suggest beginning with a low intensity activity and gradually increasing the intensity, keeping in mind to give them short but frequent rest time and water breaks.
Our next question, as a coach, what are some recommendations to be inclusive? So the first recommendation I have is creating a peer tutor system. This is by creating partners within the activities and games that you're leading, and allows the children to make social connections between each other and between the others at the station. It also allows the opportunity to reinforce learning by having each other teach the skills and activities and improve the overall learning throughout the class.
All right, and some recommendations that we can be inclusive with our equipment. Instead of getting the children to put on pennies, because those with a BMI over 30, this may cause feelings of embarrassment, we can ask them to all put the pennies around their neck, or they can tuck the pennies into their shorts.
And what I recommend is, I usually use this. I use small-sided games. This allows children with a BMI higher than 30 opportunities to play just as much as the highly athletic children in the class.
And another recommendation we have is creating goals in the start of either the team or the semester, and having individualized goals so they can assess their own performance and have personal accomplishments rather than having a broad goal for the entire class.
All right, and some relevant examples of athletes or physical activity participants. We have Bartolo Colon. He is a male pitcher. And we also have Amanda Bigson, which she is a female shot put Olympian. And where can we find more information? Childhood Obesity Foundation is a great link to use. Thank you.
Subscribe up here.
Hi, I'm Jessica. What are the general characteristics of a person with Down syndrome? So people with Down syndrome have an extra copy of chromosome 21, which alters their development. Their physical traits include low muscle tone, small stature, an upward slant to their eyes, and a single deep crease in the center of their palm. People don't always display all of these features. They can display one or all of them. And Down syndrome affects about 1 in every 700 babies born. There's only 1% of cases that are actually genetically passed down between families, so usually it's just because of the mutation that occurs in the genes. And Down syndrome can result in various degrees of cognitive delays. What are the safety considerations and medical concerns of people with Down syndrome? Safety considerations for people with Down syndrome consist of vision and hearing, which are affected. A lot of people wear glasses, and some students have hearing aids, but they don't like to wear them. So as a teacher, you can encourage them to wear their hearing aids for small periods of time, working up to a full class. And also creating physical boundaries to prevent the students from wandering off in the middle of your session. What are your recommendations for teachers, coaches, and fitness leaders to implement people with Down syndrome into their classes? So the first step to implementing people with Down syndrome into your class is believing that they can actually succeed. If you believe in them, then they're more likely to be able to actually do it themselves. People with Down syndrome actually learn better in regular programs with other kids. So to implement them into your programs, you can help with their transitions getting to the PE class or the group session, especially if it's an unfamiliar environment to them. You can also use multiple models of teaching. For example, use a lot of visual aids and tactile aids. When you're giving instructions, wait 7 to 10 seconds after you're given instructions, just so that they have a chance to kind of absorb what you've said. Also use verbal cues. You can use songs if the kids are younger, use rhymes, keywords, and repetitive phrases. Also using routines. Do the same thing every class for warm-up or for cool-down so that the kids know exactly what's coming. They love to have routines. And also break the skills down into smaller steps so they don't have too much to deal with all at once. Participants may get really caught up in one task, especially if they're being successful at it and they won't want to change their task. So just always kind of have a schedule ready so that they know what's coming next and they're prepared for it before it happens. Lastly, you want to avoid a noisy or busy environment because the students can get distracted. So just try to minimize all of the noise and all of the chaos so that they actually are paying attention to you. And try to have consistent staff, as people with Down syndrome sometimes listen better to certain people, and if those people are always changing, then they may not be as responsive anymore. What is an example of an athlete with Down syndrome? So one athlete with Down syndrome is Joe Staclosa, who's a power lifter, and he was recently inducted into the Special Olympics Delaware Hall of Fame. He can actually bench press 405 pounds and has won a number of medals from the Special Olympics World Games. He also participates in lots of other sports, including volleyball, basketball, swimming, golf, bowling, boxing, and wrestling. Another example is 14-year-old Jacob McNeil, who does track with his school. He runs the 80 and the 100-meter dash, and his team loves his fun and inspiration that he brings. What is a resource people can access to receive more information on Down syndrome? A really great resource for information about Down syndrome is the Gross Motor Skills in Children book written by Patricia Winders. This book illustrates activities such as running and helps to integrate people with Down syndrome into class with everyone else. Another resource is the Down Syndrome Research Foundation, which has a large range of materials which cover physical development for people with Down syndrome.